वाक्याय नमः. ॐ हिङ्गुलाम्बिकाय नमः. ॐ कालकालाय विद्महे कालातीताय धीमहि तन्नः कालभैरव प्रचोदयात्. ॐ हिङ्गुळे परमहिङ्गुळे अमृतरूपिणी तनुशक्तिमनशिवे श्री हिङ्गुळाय नमः. Namaskaram. Welcome to yet another video of our Ishtartha Guru Bhairava. Today we are going to talk about one of the Swarup of the Bhairava, which has not been spoken so much when it comes to awareness about the Bhairava Guna or consciousness of Bhairava. From a Dashamaha Bhairava perspective, he is a seventh Bhairava. And he is Matanga Bhairava. Matanga Bhairava is actually connected even to the Dashamahavidya, Matangima. But before we connect to those dots, let me also just tell you about how exactly Matanga Bhairava came into existence. See, according to the Tantra Raja Tantra or Kaula Nirvana Tantra, there are certain stories, or we can call it as mythological informations which connects to the Matanga Bhairava. When actually it's been addressed that every Swarupa of a Bhairava has a reason to actually come into an to altar, such that actually he take case or he is come for a reason. Similar is for the Matanga Bhairava. When the basically you know that actually during the Rishimuni times, even we had something called as in caste. People used to actually have rituals. Arrogance used to be happening at those time also. At that point of time, there was a situation where actually people had a shouldered into an ego, or we can call it as like a ritual arrogance was being very popped up high. And Devatas actually themselves failed to understand what is the nature actually and how exactly Shakti is trying to convey this message to them. Even if you see from a Rishikula perspective, even they fail to understand what they are trying to realize, how exactly the situation is getting changed, what impurity is actually creating them to actually do a false. But you know that, but every core of creation has some reason, and that particular reason was this: like people used to be much involved in the caste, and they used to talk more about the diversity. They more used to talk about the different practices which normally been followed, and they used to tell that actually these set of people should not follow this. See, in the spiritual crisis, when all these things happened, they're like it was like all the Rishi Munis actually were able to approach to the Saptarishis, and they were able to convey that actually currently the situation in the complete Yuga has been changed, and we need some kind of a Swarupa of a Daiva which can actually balance this particular imbalance which has been created. In the spiritual crisis, especially, our Parama Shiva, as you know, Bholenatha, he took the form, especially in the form of a unknown visible information which has never been spoken much more, the Matanga Bhairava. He is also called as in Chandala. See, Chandala actually the word from a Sanskrit, we can tell that actually people from a low caste, or Avaduta we can call it as, because Chandala is somewhat actually been called for a people who are highly mystical, Avadutas, or Chandala is actually like more like into a bearing a Aghori type of way of resemblance. That's how actually Shiva, every Swarupa he took into the Bhairava Guna, he was in the same way of Tattva when he carried out. Same was with Matanga Bhairava. He was in the Swarup of a Chandala, like Avadhuta, bearing a all like jata. He had a matted hairs. He had like ashes completely on his body, and surrounding with the dogs, many of the swanas actually. And he was drumming with a skull bowl, as well as he appeared in the cremation ground. So basically, Matanga Bhairava, his first appearance was as a Chandala, that is, as an Avaduta in the cremation ground. He was born not from the womb. See, Shiva Swarupa, many of the Swarupas, we have a difference between Avatar as well as a Swarupa. Avatar, when it comes to it, is actually they go into the complete life cycle of the human creation, whereas Swarupas, they has a different ways. Okay, so basically you need to understand this basic information. When Matanga Bhairava came into an existence, it was like more like he did not come from any of the womb, but from the pure of what you call it, like Ichha Shakti, which was from the Paramashiva himself. Or we can call it as, in the Kaula Nilvana Tantra, it is articulated that when Shakti activated the Shiva, that actually this his Swarupa is currently importance. From a Tripura Bhairavi perspective, herself actually she made this particular form to be created, and that particular form as a sun form, sun um, from the fire, or we can call it as Yoni Bindu, we can call it as, because Ma Swarupini, when it comes to, she was able to articulate or able to convey the message to Paramashiva that this moment, due to take caring the current situation of the crisis from a caste perspective, he need to be in the Swarup of a Chandala, which he need to tell to the entire society that Shiva Guna doesn't mean that actually sitting as a one particular caste or a um, set of people actually doing his aradhana. This is what actually this particular of Matanga Bhairava was able to disclose us. See, Matanga Bhairava, born from a deepest, we can call it as a deepest womb of the Shakti, through the cremation ground, even a pure as well as every potent actually was being born. Here, in this particular, there is one particular mantra which claims that actually Matanga Bhairava was created by the Bhairavi, Tripura Bhairavi, with with Ichha Shakti, where Shiva was able to take into that Swarupa. Even I believe you would be knowing it, as we are also running the post series when it comes to the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra. It is all about Tripura Sundarima in a Bhairavi Swarupa asking Bhairava, the Shiva, about the existence, how exactly the liberation can be attained. And that's how actually Vijnana Bhairava Tantra came into an existence with 112 ways actually. And in that 112 ways is where actually this particular Swarupa also stands on. Tripura Sundari Bhairavi. See here, Tripura Bhairavi was able to convey the message very to the Shiva that at this crisis we need your involvement. So here, this particular Swarupa talks like he is a Matanga Bhairava is a son of Tripura Sundari Bhairavi or Tripura Bhairavima. In the context, please do not go into the context whether actually biological father and mother, somewhat like, no, Ichha Shakti. It was a Ichha Shakti of Tripura Sundarima. So before we step into how exactly who Matanga Bhairava is all about, one we need to understand about here is, he being the seventh Surupa of a Dashamaha Bhairava, he is also connected as the concept of Matangima. We will deep dive into this information, but here in Tantra Rajatantra, it is been articulated that he is also a part of Ashtabhairava. Like we can call it as he being the part of Ruru Bhairava. His one part actually is Matanga Bhairava. It is somewhat like very deeply rooted. Every particular Ashtabhairavas is being again subdivided into 8 forms, and those 8 forms actually is connected to one particular Swarupa or one particular Devi connection when it comes to the 64 yoginis, or it may be Dashamaha Vidyas Mahadevis, or even if you see from the Ashtabhairava perspective, or even if you see from the Dashamahabhairava perspective. Here, deepest rooted information actually in a Kaula Tantra, it has been articulated like Ruru Bhairava was the form of Matanga Bhairava. Like we can call it as like he stands as a vibrational twin of Matangi. And Matangi Devi is actually a tantric god of a wisdom as well as beyond the auxiliary. She is like um, Saraswati Ma in a tantric way. But to understand the context about the Kaula Nilvana Tantra when it came to an Swarupa as Matanga Bhairava is been articulated as Ashtabhairava, it was like in the rare view, it has been said that all his guna tattva, see, every Ashtabhairavas is connected to again sub 8 swarupas of his activities or the actions. In Ruru Bhairava, so it is been said Matanga Bhairava is like a esoteric who take care of the, we call it as like Uchishta or left around, because Chandala, as I told you, Chandala is having a lot of other different meanings also. Like it may be like Chandala, like as I told you, who take care of the cremation ground is also called as in Chandala. He being like low caste, portrayed, people do not go with him. Or even if you see someone who has actually been part of the cremation ground, people feel that actually he is the outraged person who is actually living in the smashana. But the fact is, cremation or a smashanam is where actually we all start our life. If you ask how, when this particular body, as we all of us every minute getting moved towards the death, and that's our final destination. In that final destination, we need to understand that that's where actually we are going to drop this particular body, because the jivatma inside will finally go to that place which it has come from. So Chandala Swarupa was very, very essential at that particular given point of time, at that yuga, which actually was needed. And it was the Ashtabhaira Swarupa, Ruru Bhairava was one of his incarnation. But let me just also give you certain view from another perspective when it comes to the Matanga Bhairava. We can tell like left hand savior of Bhairava Tattva is connected to Matanga Bhairava. He is also an embodiment of what we call it as like unorthodox, okay, unorthodox way of grace is actually the Swarupa of Matanga Bhairava. And also we can see that actually the guardian of the mantra Shakti, because Matangima is actually, as I told you, she being a tantric Swarupi of Saraswati Ma. Here, many people tell about from a different perspective. But here in Matangima, Dashamaha Vidya, she's been also connected as Uchishta Swarupini. Here, Bhairava is also considered as a Uchishta Swarupa. So that is a way the connection, or we can connect like arising of the connection which get connected between Matanga Bhairava as well as Matangima. The cyclic of transcendence beyond the social norms was actually what Matanga Bhairava was able to create us. See, mythological as well as from a tantric origin perspective, what we need to understand is there are very few books actually which talks about deep connection between the Tantra. And when it comes to the word Tantra, it is only like Shiva Swarupa. And when it comes to the Shiva Swarupa, it is only the Bhairava, or we can call it as see again, Veerabhadra also will come into the picture when it comes to the Tantra. And even we can talk like it is also Ganas actually will also come into a picture. Here, esoterically, what we need to understand here is when it comes to the Tantra Raja Tantra, a very sacred book when it comes to knowing about the Tantra foundation. Because there are only 3 books which are being shade, or we can call it as, which has a essence or the core meaning of the Tantra, and that one particular part of book is actually Tantra Raja Tantra. In Tantra Raja Tantra, there are thousands of actually slokas, in which actually most of the slokas actually are connected to Bhairava Swarupa, because the I can call it like the Tantra Raja Tantra echo information is actually what is being captured in the Kashmiri Saivism, and that is what actually is in Kaula Nirvana Tantra actually also has that essence which has been captured. Here in Kashmiri Saivism, especially when it comes to the Triya Yuga, we call it as Triya, like there are certain set of articulation which was being made, and that actually Matanga Bhairava Swarupa has actually been articulated. See, here we need to understand at that given point of time, Vedic was actually the four Vedas was being considered as the highest. Three Vedas. Atharvana Veda was later been added by in the later days, because when it comes to adding the initial days, actually only they were considering the three Vedas as very essential. Fourth Veda, Atharvana Veda, actually came into or got added when it is like from the Rishimunis, actually it was being requested that we need to add this, and this is also been said that the lineage of the kings were asked to actually add this. But in deep information, if you go, the three Vedas has a deep connection when it comes to the Vedic rituals. Atharvana Veda is actually most of the information is connected, or we can call it as most of the information is connected to the Tantra, or we can call it as the left hand path. So here, let's go back to the storyline. When the Vedic rituals actually was being popped up as highest, the left around people, or we can call it as a left around people, was to be separately governed, and that governance was actually in a Chandala Swarupa. Bhairava was able to come into and tell us that the rituals were performed, but without any proper bhava of when it is being performed in a Vedic, and the actions was being taken by priests as well as the kings, and they got into a dilemma, and that's how actually the rejection all started with. See, we can call it as this is the era of ritual arrogance, or the cry came from from Mother Earth only, that actually there is a discrimination. Even if you see, like Shankaracharya, he also came to and he was able to teach his essence, that when all the caste was actually popped up, when ritual arrogance was being very at the peak, that's where actually the Swarupa of the Daiva comes into picture. That's how even the many of the sages came in, and they were able to save the Sanatana Dharma in a proper way. When it comes to the what we call it as ritual arrogance at the peak, that's where actually there was actually a situation where actually like temple used to be considered as most prominence, and only a few caste people were being considered as to recite particular mantras, or we can call it as like voice out for the one particular caste was actually very high. And this is where the cry, the Vaka came into an existence. Vaka is nothing but actually a divine speech. Okay, a divine speech where silently being heard. Shiva, during the meditation, he got to know that actually, yeah, and even Bhairavima, Tripura Bhairavima was able to know that actually this is the right time actually one particular Swarupa need to come into an existence. Tripura Bhairavima's Swarupa is also Matangi, and Paramashiva's Swarupa is also a Matanga Bhairava. So we need to always understand in the context, not from a biological point perspective. It is overall from a Swarupa which came into an existence to take uplift of the humanity at that given point of time. The Shiva seated in the Shunyapita, it has been said that actually Chiba Paramatma actually sat it into the Shunyapita, responding not with an angry or a we can call it as but with a very clear divine intention which Tripura Bhairavi was able to convey him at why exactly the situation is really needed. He, at that point of time, let me just disclose this. Every Swarupa of the Bhairava, when it comes to, he has come from the third eye of the Shiva. Okay, so third eye is being considered as a Jnana Pita. Okay, it is also considered as a Shunya Pita because that is the reason Guru Bhairava, we call him as a Guru Bhairava because he came out of third eye, the knowledge. The third eye is considered as Agnya Chakra and it has been considered as the highest when it comes to the peak of all the chakras. Sahasrara is there. But before to go to the Sahasrara, Agnya is very, very essential, which is in knowledge. And knowledge is nothing but Guru. And even if you recall, Bhairava, when he came into an existence, he came to teach the creators that his creation actually was in danger to the Brahma. And that's how actually Guru Bhairava, Swarupa or Guru Bhairava Tattva was been activated. And when coming back to the story, when Shunya Pita actually was an active, when from the third eye, when the Matanga Bhairava came into an existence, there was a fusion of nada. We can call it as a sound creation. Every creation has one particular nada, and that particular nada, in this nada, one particular bindu, a cosmic seed was being created, and the new force actually was being created with the Icha Shakti of the Shakti, Tripurama, and Jnana Shakti, or we can call it as a third eye, was being activated, and nada was being created. That's where Matanga Bhairava came into existence. Matanga Bhairava was none other than the Nada Shakti, the Bindu. When he came out of the third eye of the Paramashiva, he was called as Matanga Bhairava. Chandala Swarupa, the left around, Uchishta, we can call it as. Maybe actually most of you may have not heard about this. Uchishta, there is a certain types of tantric rituals when it comes to the word as a Uchishta because it is somewhat connected to left arounds. Uchishta is also one of a Swarupa where Ganapati is also been worshipped in a very deep, in Ganapatya Tantra, in Ganapatya tradition, and it has a very highest level of what we call it as Tantra sadhanas. Similar is also with the Bhairava, in similar is also with the Devi. What we need to understand here is it is a three types of a guna. It is like Satvika, Tamasika and Rajasika, and when it comes to actually like Uchishta, it is a combination or a combination of all the Tattva gunas. Okay, it is Satvika, Tamasika, Rajasika. When it comes everything like clubbed, that's where the existence came into creation. That's where the left around or the caste outrage which caused him to come out. Basically, it is iconographically, if you see how Matanga Bhairava is being articulated, as very beautifully it is been articulated. Matanga Bhairava, there are esoteric meaning also when it comes to the word Matanga. Matanga means also the elephant. Like it is a symbol of a force as well as a memory. As I told you, he came in the Swarup of a Chandala, outcast, a rishi knowing in his own legendary way. We can call it as actually, Chandala is also a rishi. He came to teach something, one particular Swarupa perspective. And he was a seer beyond the social classification at that particular point of time. That Swarupa of complete was Matanga Bhairava. See, Matanga Bhairava, as I also articulated from the Ruru Bhairava perspective, Bhairava who walks with the outcast or ride on the elephant of the memory, and we can call it as shattering the social hypocrisy through the inner wisdom at that particular point of time. That was actually the iconography which was being shared, or which we all have his iconography information. Here, what we need to also understand is his appearance or the iconography, in especially when it comes to the Tantra text, is being articulated like a mantra. See, every Swarupa actually in the Tantra Jnana is being from a one particular mantra hum, and that particular mantra is being understood like how exactly how mystically his iconography was all about. It's when it comes to the Matanga Bhairava, yeah, he will be holding his sword, and a sword to not kill any kind of demons. Okay, it is about the killing the ego as well as a duality, as Shankaracharya did, killing the duality or holding the duality in structure in such a way that killing your ego and making a duality as a first preference. Here what we need to understand is, I am separate, you are separate. This is what actually was been at the peak at that given point of time. That's where actually his sword, or we can call it as khadga, was being articulated from an iconography perspective. When it comes to his eyes, a wide, it's like a burning eyes, red eyes, fire eyes. But that fire is not to burn someone, it is to burn with a love, burn with a actually bhava, burn with to make people that your existence is very limited. Make sure that actually rather than actually slipping out with your current emotions as well as an intelligence, see the divine actions which is being created from him, and why exactly this particular sequence I have come into an existence. That is an eye of a fiery, which tells us it is like a father. Okay, father correcting a children. Even if you see, like, if children is doing any mistake, father will actually have a gaze, seeing that actually, oh, you're doing mistake. In similar glance was the connection of the Bhairava eyes, which was telling us a lot of meanings. He's riding on the elephant, Matanga elephant, but also he's riding on an elephant in this symbolical way. What we need to understand is, when the Swarupa of the Bhairava, when he rides on the elephant, it is about we can call it as controlling over the memories. This particular Swarupa will control the memories, and also a karmic impressions which has been created from all our past lives, and a deep subconscious thoughts which is always bothering us, like I am separate, you are separate, to dhamana, or we can call it as to crunch all those things. Elephant iconography was been done. Even he wears a garland actually of bones, similar to other Swarupa like Kala Bhairava, as the Runda, or as a skull he wears. Here he wears the bones actually. It is no like Angulimala, okay, just as an iconography I'm trying to correlate it. But here he wears a bones, okay, to tell that he has a mastery over death as well as in transformation. He wears a bones as particularly as a mala. And as I initially told, Matangima, she will be sitting on his left side, whispering certain mantras into his ears about Shakti awakening to the Shiva. Every Swarupa of the Bhairava is connected, and all 64 yoginis. You know that actually it is all connected to the 64 Bhairavas also. And much more than that, even we call as cords in the blood. We have DNA in the blood, which has 64 cords. Even science, if you see, they are not able to connect the dots, because whatever the connection what we have from a Sanatana mythological perspective, everything is connected, even to till dated from a science perspective. But this decoding of this information was never been said out. Maybe on a hypothetical way, they were able to share this information on a very subtle and a logical level. But if you go into the depth, the 64 yoginis, the 64 Bhairavas are connected to 64 cords of the DNA of the human blood. Maybe we will talk about this in a very unique information. Maybe we'll talk on the separate video, but let's pitch it. Here it is also been said in the one of the mantra in Kaula Nirvana, like Matanga Bhairava offers a pairs with Matangima as a Dashamahavidya. She being a or we can call it as complete Swarupini, or a caretaker, or we can call it as actually the governor of a Vaka, or we can call it as Vak Devata. She is actually of a speech. She is a Devata of a speech. She is a Devata of a music, Nadha, the goddesses of a speech as well as sound, Nadha. Okay, and especially if you see, we need to understand it was like pol- at that given point of time it was polluted and or the hidden only to the particular set of people to open up. That's where Vaka Devata also came into existence. She was able to tell the Uchishta Deva, Bhairava, Matanga Bhairava to take care of all these things. See, in Kaula Tantra, Matanga Bhairava is a born of Matangima's actually unstruck sound, or we can call it as somewhat like Anahatanada. Um, this is one sequence of information which comes in the particular mantra, but also it is said that Matanga Bhairava is a masculine energy of the left hand marga, or what we call it as Vama marga, who is also guarding the Shaktis and sacredness of appearance of it may be like her with or without of devotions, people who are approaching her. He always makes sure that actually from his Ugra Swarupa perspective, make them clear that actually no, when it comes to the Devi, when it comes to the Mahashaktis, you need to be surrendered, and you need to bow down because Ma, ultimately we need to surrender to the Ma. And that's what actually he was able to tell when it comes to the Dakshina Marga perspective. See, here he raises not in a lineage or the dynasty. Basically, we need to understand it is inner elevation, rising of the Kundalini. From a human being perspective, we need to understand Muladhara is somewhat like actually always dividing ourselves. I am separate, you are separate. When particular chakras, we call it as consciousness, the rising of the consciousness of a chakra from a Muladhara to the Sahasrara, from a Jnana Shakti perspective, the hidden Shakti, the space which is actually where the Daiva is been considered. Here, we need to, from a consciousness of a chakra based perspective, we can understand in that esoterical way. But before connecting into those dots, let me also tell you something which is connected to Matangima. Okay, see, Matangima is actually the ninth Swarupini of Dashamahavidya. Matangima is a Devi for the Vaka, as I told you, inner speech when it comes to, and also we can call it as impure purity. Impure purity. So she is also Uchishta. She is considered as seated on the orthodox as well as outcast. She will be sitting on them, and she is like a we can call it as forest dwelling Tantra Saraswati. Here actually she is a Tantra Saraswati, and she will be actually roaming in the forest from a Nada perspective, ruling over the mantra sound, whatever we have from a Dakshina Marga perspective, sorry, Vama Marga perspective, whichever the sound or the Nada has been connected, this is connected to the Matangima. It is like a mystical melodies which has been connected to, and even if you see from a Nada Aradhana, we call it as Nada Aradhana, when we activate the Shiva Swarupa behind 112 verse, especially from a Vijnana Bhairava Tantra perspective, Nada Aradhana is also one part of it, telling that actually from the Nada, from the divine sound also the liberation can happen. It is somewhat like a mystical melodies. Okay, we can also tell that actually it is a secret wisdom where Matangima was able to come into an existence to teach. There is a secret wisdom which is really essential when it comes to the Dakshina Marga or Vama Marga. Dakshina Marga is all about Vedics, but Vama Marga is all about the occult, unseen energy powers which can be felt. Here, what we need to understand is her domain is beyond the social rules, whatever we see from a social norms perspective, Saraswati Ma perspective, from a Dakshina Marga. But here she is a forest, or we can call it as like a forest dwelling Tantric Saraswati. She is out of all the social rules. Okay, so as a several also narrated from a Tantra perspective as well as from the Agama perspective, her origin, or we can call it as most prominent was it is being connected in such a way The Matangima Swarupa came into an existence from Ma Parvati. So when Devi Parvati actually in her Uchishta Swarupini, like left around state, created a powerful form that could hold the knowledge beyond the logic or beyond the rules. From that's where actually that particular form is called Uchishta Devi. Uchishta Devi is somewhat like Matangi. She was born outside the Vedic, what we call it as boundaries, or to the we can call it as a Matanga lineage or hunted lineage. Thus, this representation of power in the merging the Shakti of those who lived in the wild as well as the forest as well as outrage made her to connect with the Matanga Bhairava. And she acted as a Uchishta, left around in the rituals, even in a Vedic, we can call it as orthodox, in a impure. Doing the rituals without any bhava, it is again impurity. That is the reason always in the sadhana perspective, when it comes to the Bhairava sadhana, we always talk about bhava. Unless there is a bhava, the ultimate connection between you as well as the Daiva will always miss out. So doing rituals orthodoxically in a impure form without any bhava is in such a way that actually it will not going to give any kind of a phala, or it is not going to give any kind of a results. And especially when it comes to the Tantra vision, it is ultimate offering what we can give it to the Daiva is about the ego. And that ego get killed only when you have a bhava getting raised from all the chakras, making sure that actually your Jnana Shakti is getting activated from your third eye, and you are going to bow down to her with a gaze of love, such that actually this is my last minute, I am sharing all this minute to you. This is the bhava that we need to carry when it comes to the Tantra vision. See, impurity of the illusion, it can be like she is like he came into a creation such that actually the impurity of a transcendental speech was very much needed at that given point of time. See, in the Tantra realm, every Mahavidyas is connected to one particular Bhairava Swarupa. For the Matangima, as I told you, the Bhairava is Matanga Bhairava. And here we need to know their combination or their esoterically or their concept, relationship perspective. Relationship would be a very wrong word. I can call it like their Swarupa perspective. It was wild, esoteric, powerful form of the Bhairava when he came as a Matanga Bhairava, because he is in a Uchishta form. He is a we can call it as a Chandala Swarupa. Chandala is not a normal Swarupa of the particular Daiva. Many of the Daivas have took the form of Chandala, but here Bhairava himself, Shiva himself came into an existence to teach to the society, to the existence, that this left around part is also very essential. That is where actually the Vama Marga came into an existence. And see, and why exactly graveyard or a cremation ground? It is untouched by the society, as we know that actually, as I already told, many people do not go there because they feel that all the emotions, negativity is all has been embedded there. Yes, but if you see, as I told you, it is the place where actually we drop our body. That is a place actually we show up our real existence, where we get merged, our Atma or Atmalinga, Atma get the Jyoti get connected to the Jyoti Swarupini or the Creator. And here Matanga Bhairava is described in the Tantra Raja Tantra as well as in the Rudramalaya Tantra, that actually one who sits with the consort of Matangi, the cycle of the flames, he will be sitting in the cycle of the flames, okay, burning all the impurities. So he will be sitting with the Ma will be holding the Veena, Nadha, that is actually Tantric, she will be actually Tantra Nadha, she will be holding, and he holds the Veena like her, and he also resonates something related to Shabda Brahma or a divine sound, because he came into the Nada when the Shiva was able to get him from a third high perspective. It was a Nada which came into in first existence. He is also called as a Nada Brahma. or we can call it as Akula, the beyond all the Kulas. Because Kula, we tag or merge the people in one particular lineage perspective, but Akula means he belongs to everyone. It is yet getting born into the Kaulatan wisdom. He told or was able to share to all of us that Akula is the main purpose. It is not about the Advaita Siddhanta duality. So that's how actually even Shankaracharya was able to tell this esoteric deepest meaning to us. Same was with Matanga Bhairava. See, resides of we can call it as Mahasmashana. He came out from the Mahasmashana because it is like transmuting the death into the liberation is where which happens when it comes to the Smashana. See, there are very deepest connection when it comes to the concept of Matanga Bhairava as well as Matangima. See, both most why it has been articulated that both actually carry the same pattern, or we can call it as same owns the same domain. We can call it and put it into this way. See, when it comes to the Matangima, it is all about unmanifested speech or a wisdom or a left around offerings which we normally do to Matangima. Similar is with Matanga Bhairava. The wildness, the destroying of a orthodox. He is also Uchishta. Even when it comes to the elemental perspective, Matangima is considered as a calm, enchanting, and inner liberation. Whereas Bhairava, like almost all the Swarupas of the Bhairava is a Farsi. But here he is in a silent. He is a guardian of a secret yogas, or we can call it as secret Paddatis. That's how Matanga Bhairava is getting connected. Here, Matangima, if you see from a iconography perspective, she is actually shown as a green, like emerald green. But here, Bhairava is from ashes. Okay, he's a radiant, burning. He's actually showing up that actually duality is nothing. Whatever has been burnt out, whatever the left around is there, that is what you purely form, you stand with. When it comes to the Matangima, it is like a veena as well as a parrot is been identified or shown in an iconographical way. But when it comes to the Bhairava, it is a trident, damaru as well as veena. So this is the iconical connection, and she is actually a Chandi of the forest. If you see from a Chandi forest or a graveyard or a that actually every cremation ground as well as a forest has certain sounds, mystical sounds, and that mystical sounds is governed and is owned by Matangima. That's how actually we can put it across. But when it comes to the Mahasmashana, cremation grounds, that's where actually Matanga Bhairava belong to. That's their order. So that's what actually we need to understand from a Swarupa perspective of Matangima as well as a Matanga Bhairava. See, inner realization or the sadhana paddhati, especially when it comes to, we need to understand their existence came into because they as a masters as the Vak Shakti, the inner speech of the clear clarity was being taught to us. That if you be in a dilemma that actually I am separate from someone, you are actually losing something unless you go into the oneness, unless you feel that actually that is Akula is what is needed, rather than getting connected or getting merged into one particular Swarupa, one particular lineage, talking about one particular activities from a Vedic perspective. That's where the left hand path of Vamamarga came into existence. Attaining control over the mantras, music as well as the communication. These are the essence of Bhairava. This is the essence of Matanga Bhairava. Why normally I tell don't get stick to one particular Swarupa? Reason is simple. When you do a Aradhana of the Bhairava, all Swarupas of Bhairava get activated, including the attributes. We can call it as the attributes of the Matanga Bhairava is somewhat like a music, mantra, mystical musics, mystical mantras, mystical communications. All these things are connected to Matanga Bhairava. And Once Bhairava Tattva is activated, the social impurities or purity or impurities, the duality is been actually put it into a dustbin. It is actually crushed. That's how actually Matanga Bhairava take cares. And he is a raw field of the awareness being. He comes in a very raw form. And but to hold her, the Shakti, one must involve the Matanga Bhairava. And uh, that's how actually Matanga Bhairava uh, was able to actually take control, or we can call it as walk through the companionship with Matangima. See here, what we need to understand: Bhairava, who knows how to drink from the skull of illusion, as we always be in a illusion, always thinking about past or the future rather than being in the present. He'll always hold the skull, telling you that I will drink the illusions whichever you carried. And this particular companion was being taught to us that the left around, the people think that actually he's been left around, is what the importance is very much needed. And here, the we can call it like, there is a certain evidence, especially um, from a Kashmiri Shaivism perspective. We can call it as the terms of Kashmiri Shaivism when it comes to the Matanga Bhairava. He was represented as Ichha Shakti Devata, will, okay, fused with a Anutara, or we can call it as Antara, or we can call it as the highest. Okay, let me put it into a simple way, like the highest form, which is really essential to create something. Ichha Shakti is needed. And that's where actually in the Kashmiri Shaivism he is being represented as a Ichha Shakti, willing fused. Okay, he is a we can call it as Shavatantriya, the free Shiva, discriminating the duality as this is good, this is bad, the duality of experiencing love is good or bad, or differentiating between me and you. And all these things get merged only when actually there is something called as a me as well as a shadow, or a sound or a non-sound. This particular merge, the freeness of the Shiva, especially we call it as Shaiva Tantriya, was actually came into existence. And also to control the Matangi, representing the Vamachara, self reflection awareness was needed, and that's where Bhairava was being represented to. See, together, what we need to understand is that here is together, especially they echoed the spanda of principles, which was a living, we can put like living throb of a consciousness, ever vibrating. Okay, yet in a subtle still level, that's where actually their swarupa came into existence. And the Kaula Marga merges Matanga Bhairava for a very for a reason. Basically it does not ask for particularly to abandon the impurities, okay, to put back fully nakedly to the altar of the consciousness, telling that Uchishta is also very important. The left around is also very important. Unless left around is not been considered, this complete existence is cannot be considered further. See here, what we need to understand here is, especially when it comes to Tantra Raja Tantra, worshipping Matanga Bhairava, especially in the cremation ground, which has been done in the Tantra Sadhana, it's like activating the Akula, or we can call it as taking charge of own thoughts. And like unless the outcast or every impurities or every silence has been diminished, seeing or getting the connectivity of the Daiva is not so easy. And that's where actually Matanga Bhairava as well as Matangima came into existence to teach us that Uchishta, the left around, is very, very, very essential when it comes to the sadhana. And in Tantra sadhana, Uchishta is very, very peak. We can call it as in Tantra Marga, Uchishta has been considered as very peak form or a process or a ritual which has been considered when it comes to the following the paddhati. So maybe I'll keep that information as precise as which is really needed for now, because when it goes into the Swarupini of Uchishta, the lot more things actually we can talk about. Like when it comes to Uchishta Swarupa, what we need to understand here is, see, this particular Swarupa, when it comes to the Tantra, it is like very, very deeply we can get connected to. And how exactly? Maybe I can tell, like when it comes to the Uchishta Swarupa, it is a deepest level of Tantra. We can call it as the understanding of the true nature of the Shakti which comes into the picture. Realizing about the creator's creation, the process of knowing the creator's creation is what actually Uchishta teaches us. It is not about many of the rishis, let me just tell you, many of the rishis and have practiced Uchishta Aradhana, and there are multiple people who also talks about Uchishta Ganapati from a Ganapati perspective. But when it comes to the Shiva Swarupa as well as Devi Swarupini, like Uchishta Swarupini of the Ma, it is Matangima, and Shiva perspective, it is a Matanga Bhairava. Matanga Bhairava, what we need to understand here is, they always taught us something like why exactly certain things are being left around. See, what we need to understand here is, left around, we think that actually the left around is not really needed when it comes to the society or to the human existence only. We feel that actually, for example, even in our body, few of the people, especially when it comes to the medical science, they tell that actually the pancreas is really not so much needed. When anyone, few of them get the gallbladder problem, they tell that actually it is not going to do anything. It is the part actually. Do you feel that actually the creator has created something wrong in our body? In this egg, when he has not done a mistake in this particular body, do you think that actually he has created something wrong in this entire cosmos? No. It is we as humans, we always have a tendency that actually we discriminate. We always have something called as you are separate, I am separate. Your Daiva Swarupa or your way of Aradhana is something different than me. This we normally, as humans, we do this mistake. What we need to understand here is, to know the real Swarupa of Shakti, that to know the real Swarupa of the Shiva Guna, or to know the Creator's creation, one need to dissolve into the Creator's act. And that is being articulated in many, all the four Vedas perspective, or even from Purana perspective also. But what we need to understand is, here is Upanishads as being the essence of all the Vedas and Puranas. Upanishads very clearly tells that following the Veda Vama Marga as well as the Dakshina Marga, why it is so important, and why we speak more about this mystical type of connections when it comes to the Bhairava, because he governs this particular domain. He is the Adipati of this particular Vidya. So always remember one thing: if you are listening something mystical, if you listening to the things which are out of your knowledge as of now, maybe one or the other way you get such kind of an information which you feel that, oh, this is a mystical information. If you are getting that, try to understand your Shaiva Guna is getting activated. You are getting little bit close to the Shiva. And once the people get connected to the Shiva, any form of the Shiva Tattva perspective or Swarupa perspective, it may be like whatever the different forms of a Shiva he took to make sure that actually the creation is in a very safest way. When it comes to the Veerabhadra, it may be Bhairava, it may be Mahakala Bhairava, or any form of 64 forms of Bhairava. He always taught us something essential, that it is all about how you're getting merged into the things where duality is getting merged. That's what we need to understand when it comes to the Bhairava Guna or a Bhairava consciousness perspective. Maybe with that note, today topic we will take in pause. So we will come back to you with one more Swarupa of a Bhairava, of Dasha Mahabhairava, where we will speak more about his guna, his tattva, his connection with Ma Shakti, and the way exactly he is blessing this Manukula with all his Swarupas, which has never been untouched. See, we have never touched such kind of a Swarupas, in trying to know about him, like how exactly his footprints are there in many, many ways, but these footprints are unseen. So we are trying to explore those unseen footprints of our Guru Bhairava from a Bhairava consciousness perspective. So we'll come with a next topic on the next video. Om Bhairavaya Namaha. Om Hingulambikaya Namaha. Om Kamakyaya Namaha. Om Hingule Paramahingule Amritarupini Tanushakti Manashive Shri Hingulaya Namaha. Namaskaram.